So now we're going to do stock dividends. The main thing to remember about a stock dividend, there is no cash involved. There should be no cash in any journal entries related to stock dividends. Okay, they're issuing more stock to their current stockholders. So what they call it is a proportional distribution of additional shares of stock to their existing stockholders. So if you owned 100 shares of stock, say you had 100 shares of stock, and they did a 10%, stock dividend, then you would get your proportional, additional shares of stock. So you might get, 10 additional shares of stock. Okay, so no cash. That's the main thing. What else? Oh, why a company might want to declare a stock dividend? Maybe they don't have any cash, but they want to give their stockholders something. So, we'll do a stock dividend. Stock dividends are sometimes given as part of, compensation packages, and, there's a lot of, various reasons to do a stock dividend. So, as with your cash dividend, you're going to have your 3 dates involved. You get a declaration date, a date of record, but stock dividends have a distribution date. Okay, that's when they are distributing the additional shares of stock. So let's take a look at this. We've got 1,000 shares of $2 par common stock outstanding. Okay, so we've issued a bunch of shares of stock. We've got 1,000 shares that are out there on the market. Each of those 1,000 shares is going to get a stock dividend. So on 10/1 we declare a 5% stock dividend. So our declaration date would be 10/1. And it's to be issued on November 1st. Okay, so that would be the distribution date. I think I messed up a date here. Maybe this should be I think the stockholders of record on 10/15. There we go. Let's do that. All right, just to keep things lined up. So you're still going to have the 3 dates involved. So let's see how this works. On the declaration date, we have to figure out, first of all, what's going to happen here. So this is a stock dividend, so we're going to call it a stock dividend. We're going to have, we're not going to create a liability here. We're going to have what's called a common stock dividend distributable. Distributable. I'll write that out once. That quickly becomes a CSDD. Okay? And then we're also going to have paid in capital in excess, and we've got par value stock of par on our common stock. So that's going to be on the declaration date. Date of record, there could be a memo, just as with a cash dividend. And then on the distribution date, when we actually distribute it, we would simply we would be debiting our common stock dividend distributable, okay, from up here, our common stock dividend distributable, and we would be crediting common stock because we've issued more common stock. Notice, no cash, no cash. All right, so now we just need to figure out the amounts. Okay, so if you kind of go through a little 4-step process, it makes it a little less complicated or a little less confusing. I don't know. You first have to ask, is it a small or a large stock dividend? And if it's a small stock dividend, say 20% or less of the outstanding stock, we're going to be valuing it at the stock's current market value. For large stock dividends, which we're not going to get into right now, we would simply be using the par or stated value of the stock. So they're accounted for a little bit differently. We're going to mostly be dealing with our small stock dividends at this point. So 5%, if you were sort of going through this process, you would say, is it Is it a small or large stock dividend? That would be your first question, and in this case, we would say it is a small stock dividend. Okay, so far so good. What's the next thing we have to figure out? How many additional shares? Okay, so we need the number of additional shares. That would be the second thing we'd have to figure out here. And so, right now there's 1,000 shares outstanding. We're doing a 5% stock dividend, so we go times 0.05, and that would tell us that we are actually going to be issuing 50 additional shares. Okay, so that's that. And then so this is our question 1, here's our question 2, number of additional shares. Now we have to do, well, what is the value of the stock dividend? And it's going to be those 50 additional shares times, because it's a small stock dividend, the market value of the stock. Okay, so the current market value of this stock is $8 a share. So we would go 50 times 8, and that would give us a value for the stock dividend of $400. Okay, so we've got our debit of 400 up here, and then we realize that we've got to allocate that between what is going to be the common stock part of it and what's the additional paid-in capital. So we have to allocate between common stock and paid-in capital. So we would take those 50 shares times the $2 par, would be $100. That would be the stock dividend itself. The remaining 300 would be the additional paid-in capital in excess of par. Okay, so now the tricky part is when we come to do our common stock dividend distributable, all we have to do is look up here. We have the amount, it's 100, and on the distribution date, we just issue that amount of stock. Okay? So if you follow the 4 steps, that gets you all the amounts you need to do the problem. And then if you think about what's happening, it is a stock dividend. So that's going to get your debit. There's no payables in here, there's no liabilities. This is a common, a stockholders' equity account. And actually you might want to know, so it's not a liability account we're dealing with here, it's all a stockholders' equity account. And that gets reported on the balance sheet in the stockholders' equity section. You've got your stockholders' equity, you've got paid-in capital where you list all your stock. So you would have common stock, and then you'd have a separate line after that for any common stock dividends distributable that hadn't been distributed at your balance sheet date. So this would be listed right after common stock because it was going to be common stock very soon. Okay, so it's a stockholders' equity account, not a liability account. And I think that's, let's see, we did the journal entries, and I take you through in the notes, if you want to gain a little bit more understanding of it, of what happens to the various accounts as a result, at each step of the process. Like what happens when we declare the stock dividend, what happens, when the stock dividend is distributed. And it shows you how stock dividends actually add to the permanent capital of the company. But as far as getting through exams, this is what you need to know here. Okay, so that's your stock dividends.